Welcome to Never Again is Now, a podcast about anti-Semitism. I am Evelyn Marcus.
And I am Phyllis Zimbler Miller.
With everything going on in the world today, Jews are being pulled in different directions by their religious, political, and cultural beliefs. Today's guest, Sanford or Sandy Cardin, founded the organization Global Jewry to strengthen the bonds that unite the Jewish people. Sandy, it's a pleasure to have you on our show. Welcome.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm honored to be here.
So let's start with saying that after a short stint practicing law, you went into the nonprofit sector. So why did you, and you've had many years of experience, so why did you decide to start this organization, Global Jewry, now, and what was your aim when you started it?
Well, thank you for that. It's good to see you, Phyllis. I started Global Jewry last summer, so the summer of 2023, and I did so really in response to what I was witnessing that was taking place in Tel Aviv with regard to the level of rhetoric and discourse among Israelis, primarily about the judicial reform issue. And I've known all along, as we all have in the Jewish world, that sometimes our level of our civility wanes, and the language that we use and the tone that we use is really not appropriate. But it was really becoming out of control, I thought, last summer. And I felt I needed to do something, given my years of activity in the global Jewish community. The decision also followed the transition of a project called Our Common Destiny, on which I had been working for the past several years, which has morphed into something called Voice of the People, which is now being run by President Isaac Herzog. And that project, having moved to the president's house, left me free to focus on this idea of strengthening the bonds that unite the Jewish people. Jewish unity has always been very important to me. It's always been something we talk about, but we talk about it in such a way that people expect that it exists. And it's really very hard. It's a much more complicated thing. And I thought we needed some help working with various organizations and leaders around the world to really strengthen Jewish unity and Jewish community.
I am so glad that you stand up for this issue. I so agree with you that our unity, that Klal Yisrael, that the unity of our different branches is so important to enjoy our being Jewish, and also for our strength in standing up to all the challenges that are coming our way, whether it's in Israel or outside of Israel. So thank you for that initiative.
You're welcome.
And I am a lesbian secular Jew myself. My background is Reform Judaism. I studied at Machon Pardes for a year, where I was together with Orthodox Jews, conservative Jews, men, women, and I learned to appreciate the different insights from all angles. So I very much appreciate what you're doing. What was your former involvement with Global Jewry?
Well, my former involvement was for 25 years, I served first as the executive director and then the president of the Charles and Lynn Family Foundation, Charles and Lynn Schusterman Family Foundation in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So for 25 years, I worked deeply on issues relating to Jewish community and to Israel and to global Jewish causes for that period of time. Subsequent to that, I joined the Genesis Philanthropy Group, and I was the CEO of something called Our Common Destiny, which was an effort, again, to remind Jews that we're what unifies us, what connects us. It had a very particular purpose that had to do with increasing the influence of diaspora Jewry over decisions that were made by the Knesset in Israel. And but that particular focus has dropped away, and it's now been more focusing on more conversations. And as I mentioned, is a project called Voice of the People being run out of Beit Hanassi with President Herzog and the Jewish Agency for Israel. So for the last 30 years, I've been working in the global Jewish community. And over that time, I've seen again and again the fact that fragmentation and segmentation of our community is more the rule than it is the exception. And even though we all talk about Jewish unity and we talk about Jewish community, and it's important to all of us, in our daily activities, we tend to focus more on our individual organizations and our individual orientations. And that is what eats away at this real notion of Jewish global sense of community and unity. And that's what we need to refocus our attention upon and work on it, because it doesn't happen by itself. It takes hard work. And I know that we can do it. And I know there are millions of Jews around the world who care about it. So I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to succeed.
I want to
So,
just say I'm very impressed with in 1 year, the list of partners that you now have on your site. It's very, I hope they take it seriously and not just lending their logos. Evelyn?
I think they do, and I thank you very much. And it's one of those situations where it took a year to bring them together, but it took 30 years to make all the connections. So
I figured it
it
was
takes
from
a
your
lot of time. So, but I appreciate that, and I'm particularly pleased with the diversity of the organizations that we have in terms of everything. And I'm also very, very pleased with the global nature. It's very important that global Jewry is a global initiative. This is about the Jewish people wherever Jews reside. This is not about any particular geographic area. It's about the Jewish people and who we are as a people.
And let me just say, that's why our program is global, about global anti-Semitism. And we interview people all over the world in English. And that was our point when we started, that we need to come together as a global community.
Absolutely.
so how do you bring Jews with different beliefs and different geographies together?
It's a great question, and it's a challenging process. The first, I would say, the first answer to that is we need to remind ourselves, and I need to remind people, and people need to remind themselves that we have much more in common than we do that divides us. Our conversations tend, as I said, to be about our individual orientation or our individual affiliations. And that's problematic when it comes to Jewish communal life, because we tend to think of our own engagement in the Jewish community first. That's the prism through which we see our engagement in Jewish life. What I want us to do is try and flip the script. What I want Jews around the world to do is think first that they're part of a global people, and then think about the way in which they engage in Jewish life. So first, wake up in the morning and recognize you're part of a magnificent people with a magnificent history, just a tremendous civilization, the contributions that we've made to society, all the things that are enriching and majestic about being part of the Jewish people. And then think, okay, what resonates most to me as being part of the Jewish community is X, Y, and Z, whether it's a Reform approach or an Orthodox approach or whatever it may be. So if we change the order in the way we think about things, that is first global and then local, not first local or individual and then universal, that's a huge step forward. A second way to do this is to encourage organizations to communicate and to collaborate much more effectively than they do today. Most organizations tend to have somewhat of a scarcity mentality, whether it relates to the participation of Jewish communities in their activities or particularly with regard to resources. They tend to think that there's a limited pot and they have to protect themselves from outside. So the Jewish communal life tends to be much more competitive than anybody would imagine if they didn't know it, right? If you're not within it. But for those of us who are deeply engaged in it, we understand it's all for good reasons. These are all good people. I'm not being critical of anybody in this. That's just the way it is. And therefore, what we need to do is find out, how do we break down the silos that exist in Jewish life, particularly institutionally? So organizations recognize that this is not a zero-sum game. The Jewish people and individual Jews can belong to as many organizations as they'd like, and they can participate and volunteer and contribute to as many Jewish organizations as they'd like. And if we change the tone within the Jewish community of encouraging broader participation rather than narrower allegiances to particular institutions or ideas, I think that's another way of doing it. So those are the two ways on the top of my list of how we may be able to achieve our objective.
And I want to ask, what are the obstacles that you beat when you're trying to do this? Because I know some of the obstacles that I've met with Jewish organizations and suggesting what are innovative programs. So,
Sure. Look, I think one obstacle, of course, is, as I've mentioned, the scarcity mentality. That is the sense that we need to protect what we have. If we share information or we share certain things, people will leave. They'll go to other organizations. We'll lose their support. We'll lose their participation. So it's a mindset, and that's particularly true as in when I think about the United States. When you think about the way in which assimilation and intermarriage is working, there's a defensive. Jewish organizations have tended to take on a defensive posture, particularly as it relates to older generations moving on and not being able to attract younger people in the way that they used to, and not being able to use the same messages. So you do have this real situation where there is a diminution of engagement, a diminution of passion. And so organizations deal with that by sort of circling the wagons, not necessarily broadening. So that's number one, a big obstacle there. Number two, which is related to that, is that organizations, it's not easy to collaborate or to cooperate. It's just not an easy kind of thing. What I mean by that is not that it's intellectually challenging, although there are some challenges to that. It's because you only have so many hours in the day, and you need to focus. Most Jewish organizations don't have unlimited resources. They don't have necessarily the personnel and the staff that they need to do their basic mission well. So looking to collaborate and cooperate is added on top, is an additive challenge. And if you don't have enough people or enough resources to do your basic work, that's where you're going to focus. You're not going to be able to do other things. Charlie Schusterman, for whom I worked, Oliver Shalom, a great man, taught me a long time ago, it's hard to think about draining the swamp when you're knee deep in alligators, right? So the Jewish community, to the extent that we're knee deep in alligators and each institution is thinking about its own challenges, it's hard to think about the broader picture, the larger vision. And so we need to help organizations do that. One of the key things that I think that global Jewry can contribute to Jewish life is actually providing the resources to help organizations think about how can they cooperate, how can they collaborate more. If they work with global Jewry, we can be that link. We can be that intermediary. We can take some of the workload off of them so that we can do some of the preliminary work and what's necessary to make those introductions, cooperatives, collaboratives, and then they can step in and do them because it'll be much easier. The table will be set for them. If we can set the table for more organizations, we can be successful.
So that is one of the things you do. If an organization calls you and wants to collaborate with similar organizations elsewhere, for instance, or very different Jewish organizations, you can help in a financial way. Is that what I understand?
I wish I could help in a financial way. As they say, Olavai, from your lips to God's ears. I wish I could do that. I wish I would find some donors throughout the world who would understand what we're trying to achieve and give me lots of money that I could then distribute back out in order to do that. Unfortunately, we're not there yet. That is a real dream of mine, but it's going to take some time to be there, and it's going to take a very innovative and creative funder or funders who are willing to do that and recognize the importance of this. But what we can do is everything except provide the financial resources. So the very first thing is, you'd be shocked. Maybe you wouldn't be shocked, but many of the listeners would be shocked to truly understand the silos that exist in the Jewish community. Let me tell you a story from many years ago, but it it represents, it tells the challenge. The challenge today is not much different. It's better, but not much different. Many, many years ago, at the end of 2000, Charlie Schusterman passed away. It was a very sad time. And for his shloshim, we invited the leaders of organizations that we had been funding. That is, at the Schusterman Family Foundation, we had been funding. And at that service, after the service in the cemetery, we had people back to the Schusterman home. And at the time, the leader of Hillel was Richard Joel, and the leader
Oh, I know
of
him.
AIPAC was Howard Core. We had been giving Hillel and AIPAC, or AIEF, actually, the American Israel Education Foundation, which is the 501c3 for AIPAC. We had been giving money. Those were our two largest recipients of Schusterman dollars. They were both located in Washington. Their offices were blocks apart, and Richard Joel had never met Howard Core. Never met, okay? These were two gentlemen in the top echelon of Jewish organizational leadership in the United States of America in the year 2000, blocks away in the same city. But what Hillel was doing is what Hillel was doing, what AIPAC and AIF was doing was, and the twain never met. Now, that is an extreme but real example of the fact that organizations are so busy doing what they are meant to do and fulfilling their mission that they just don't, and particularly the leadership, just don't have the time to meet other people and have these broader conversations. It also mimics or trends with the down, sort of the diminished role of something like the Jewish Federations of North America, where in the old days at the CJF, right, of the Council of Jewish Federations and UJA back now years, I'm dating myself, years and years ago, but at those organizations used to hold conferences where people came together and organizations came together and had that opportunity to be together and to meet. It's not the same anymore. And so what we need to do is make sure that we create the time and we make the introductions. So if somebody who's a partner of ours or on the advisory board calls me and says, do you know someone? Chances are that over 30 years, I've made that relationship, or I'm 1 degree away. I can make that introduction. And then hopefully what we can do as an organization is shepherd further communication and maybe build communities of practice and bring other people in and really help organizations cooperate and collaborate in ways that they wouldn't just by themselves.
So you have a lot of connections. You can introduce people to each other if they want to. But how do we create the motivation in Jewish organizations to collaborate or at least learn to know each other?
Well, I think we have both internal and external motivations. I mean, we're living in a period right now where we clearly have external motivation to come together, to unite, and to work with one another and be in touch with one another more than ever before. I mean, if we're in that environment, if there's a Jewish person alive who doesn't think that this is a moment where we need to be unified more than it may be at any point in the last 50 years, then they're not reading the paper, they're not looking at the news, they're not in any way engaging with the world, right? That's where we are today. So we have the external. But the external, what happens with external challenges is they often fade. And so that's not enough. That Jewish unity it's not enough to build Jewish unity on the challenges that we face as a Jewish people or the challenges that Israel faces. We need to build Jewish unity on more positive resources or a more positive sense of what how we can enrich each other. When you talk about collaboration and cooperation with organizations, the main way to convince people that it's in their interest is to show them that it adds value to what they're doing. So one of the things we're trying to do is help our partners understand that by working with Global Jewry, we can help them broaden their reach and amplify their message. In other words, if we can find a way to maximize the distribution channels of all of our partners, and we get them to work together, suddenly an organization that has 1,000 followers working with Global Jewry can send out a message that reaches 5,000 people, 10,000 people, 100,000 people. So if we can convince our partners that by working together, they not only strengthen the Jewish people and the global community, they also are furthering their own organization, their own programs, their content, their messages getting out, that's of benefit to them directly, and it's of great benefit to the Jewish people totally. So that's how I think is the key way, one key way we can do it.
Can you give an example that of such a collaboration that's in the last year you've been able to midwife?
You know, it's funny because Evelyn mentioned Pardes. I literally just finished on an email chain with Pardes. Pardes has some activities coming up, some Zoom seminars that they are sending out there, inviting the public. And Pardes has its own, right, its own distribution channel, and the people who know Pardes will receive it. But we've offered to put the Pardes Zoom series, which is on difficult conversations in Israel, just 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, we offered to put it on our social media. So all the people that we reach, which are the organizations, and we hope the organizations follow suit. That's really the key. That's really the success, is that next phase. But we'll promote it. And if by our promoting it, our partners promote it, now Pardes's reach for the same seminar is much broader than it was. That's the idea. And as I said, that's 15 minutes old. We'll see what happens. Convincing the partners to share information from other partners is not so easy as you can imagine.
Yes.
But that's what we're going to work on. Look, everyone is going to have to set a little bit of their ego and their limitations aside, the way that they see the world. This isn't going to work if people don't bring a new perspective and a new understanding that we benefit from working together. It's not a loss. We benefit. We have tremendous organizations with incredible content, fabulous people, wonderful programming, and all of that is not reaching the broadest possible audience because of their limited reach. If we can increase the reach of all these Jewish organizations, we'll be better as a community for it. We'll be more unified as a community for it. And we will be using our resources much more effectively and efficiently, which will allow us to do even more. So it's a win-win-win for everyone. We just have to approach things a little differently, and we can succeed.
And after this recording, I would love to discuss with you whether there are ways we can amplify other organizations in your network, help them, and maybe you could help us to reach other audiences than we already do.
For sure, and for sure, and to one example with regard to Never Again Is Now, as Phyllis and I have discussed, we on our website is really the one place where we have a connection to the broader world, to individual Jews. It's not focused on our organizational partners. It's a website that's meant to make Jewish life as accessible as possible for anyone who comes to our site. One of the things we have on our site is we have a news drop-down menu. Under there we have podcasts, and we've listed 8 or 9 podcasts from around the world on Jewish topics. And we encourage the visitor to our website to click and to go and look at those websites, listen to those websites, look for information. We have a chat bot on our website that will allow people to do some searching both on our site and in general. We're here for you. So we want more and as many people as possible to understand that Never Again Is Now is available, and they should listen to it if it's something in which they're interested, and they should share it with their friends. That's the whole point of Global Jewry, is to lift every Jewish organization up so that it achieves its full potential. That's what this is about. It's not about, Global Jewry is about Global Jewry in itself, capital G, capital J. Global Jewry is about Global Jewry, small g, capital J, where everyone benefits.
Thank you for putting us up there. Yes.
I have to give him a compliment. It's the first time anyone who you're our 149th interview, Sandy. So it's like our 3-year anniversary this summer. Anyone who we've interviewed has has said to me in an email, how can I help your message get farther? I almost fell off my computer seat. And so clearly you have a different mindset than in many, I don't want to, Jewish organizations and people we've met, for which I thank you. And I have an idea I'm going to suggest
Great.
you off camera.
Great.
But in many ways, it's simple to become a partner. You click on that link on your website. But then if they want to have a conversation, I wanted to give you, I want to read from your recent email. I signed up and I get emails. I love this. Have an achievement, e.g. publications, awards, appearances, etc. you would like highlighted in your future GC connections, let us know by emailing, and it's you. Now, I understand maybe other people also look at your email, but just the fact that it's your name and not info at really impressed me.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. It is we did start out info at, I changed that. I wanted people to know that as we're in this building phase and we're connecting, they're dealing directly with me. This is not a well financially resourced enterprise, and that's an understatement. I'm very, very thankful to the support of Michael Stenberg and Debbie Dadon and Mitch Steer. There are people who have stepped up and have been fantastic, but it's a relatively low budget enterprise at this point. We're looking to do more, and so you're looking to some extent at the chief cook and bottle washer of the enterprise, and I'm devoting myself to this on a full-time basis, and I think I'm more busy or in quote unquote retirement than I ever was when I was actually working.
I just think it's marvelous what you're doing,
Well,
Evelyn.
thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
So let's talk about what we as individuals can do to support your goal, but also one of the things that inspired me a lot in this interview is your advice for us individuals to wake up in the morning and think there is this global Jewish community, and what can I do to connect with that and support it and make it stronger and better. I think that's a wonderful advice. And I'm definitely planning to follow that starting first thing tomorrow morning.
Great.
What are some other things our listeners can do right now to help bring diverse Jews and Jewish people and Jewish groups together?
Well, I think the first thing is the utilization of social media. I mean, that's really where everything is these days. That's where you make the difference. So I think with regard to Global Jewry itself, follow us on social media, follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, wherever it may be. We're not yet on TikTok, but follow us where we are. Take a look at our website and share. See what we're putting out and share it with as many people as you can. It matters to funders, it matters to others, the number of followers. That's important to us because the more followers we can demonstrate to others that people are listening. That's important. That will be important internally to us, but externally, it's get the message out, share the message, because our message is always going to be about supporting a Jewish organization or something that engenders Jewish unity, a sense of Jewish connection. It's all going to be positive. It's not, we're non-sectarian, we're non-partisan, none of that. We're talking about the beauty and the majesty of being Jewish in the 21st century, and what we can do, what our responsibilities are to each other, and what our responsibilities are to the world at large. So that's a number one thing. Secondly, if the advisory board is comprised of global leaders from all around the world. If you're a leader in your Jewish community, particularly outside of the United States and Israel, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to talk to you and see if it's a good fit for you to be on our advisory board. Because as I said, the global nature of this is very, very important. There are lots of reasons it's very important, but representation, because this is about global Jewry. It's not about just the US or Israel or even the US-Israel relationship. There are incredible people who live in Jewish communities in the rest of the world and from whom we can all learn so much and with whom we want to stay connected and engaged. So that's important. Another way is the goal is to have as many partners as possible, right? So if you're engaged with an organization and they're not already a partner of Global Jewry and they fit in our values, send them our way. We would love to keep expanding the number of partners that we have, because that is the methodology by which we believe we can reach more people. So the more partners we have, if we can engage those partners and get them to use their distribution channels to send out the message and to build collaborations and to help strengthen programming of all other partners and other organizations, that's how this really works. That's the win in all of this. So if people know a partner or engage with an organization that's not a partner already, please send them our way, send them to our website where partners can apply and let us know. So, and the last is be nice to one another, right? That was when this all started. People said, why are you doing this? I said, I just want Jews to be nice to one another. And they said, well, how do you start an organization? I said, I don't know. But what I do know is we need that. And we need a place where we're not fighting all the time. We need a place where we're not only talking about what divides us, what differentiates us. We need a place where we remember that we're all one family. And in families, people are different. They get along, they don't get along, they have different interests. We understand that. We're not talking about unanimity. We're not talking about uniformity, right? We're talking about unity. And if we can find a place where we all feel comfortable and it's trust, there's a sense of trust, there's a sense of sharing, there's a sense of commonality, then we will be a stronger community for it. And that's what I'm hoping Global Jewry can bring in as many ways as possible.
And I'd like to just clarify, you can sign up to be a partner. There's no buy-in. There's no make this financial contribution to be a partner. I think this is very important to stress, Sandy, that being a partner means being invested in Global Jewry and in commitment, and you don't have to put up funds.
In the past, yes. And not only that, we also make it clear that to be a partner of Global Jewry, there is no time or financial requirement. There's no expectation, just a sense that you believe in the concept. Now, that's how we started. I do want to quickly add, but we don't mind if you would like to give us time or financial resources. So don't feel like you're excluded, but there's no expectation, no requirement.
So I just wanted to, yes.
Yes, thank you very much for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
So any last thoughts before we thank you for this marvelous interview?
Well, first, thank you for this opportunity. It's very important. I hope we'll send lots of people to listen to Never Again. I hope other people will listen to it. It's a very vital podcast at a very challenging time for the Jewish people. So kol hakavod to the two of you for doing this and helping to spread this important message about what's happening right now. And look, we're all in this together. We have the potential. We're a wonderful community, and there's plenty there that does connect us. We just have to remind ourselves of that every now and then, because it's so easy in these conversations just to think about the differences. And society in general is also pointing in that direction, trying to point out differences, trying to polarize people. So that's what's happening in general society. Unfortunately, we need to fight against that, not just for our own community, for the global Jewish community, but we need to fight against that so that we continue to be an Or LaGoyim, that we continue to be a light unto the nations, and we show a different way of being people, being unified, being civil, being respectful, and being all one world. So I hope people will think about that and work towards that. And I thank you again for this opportunity.
Well, thank you for those wonderful words and for your mission. And we thank our listeners. And for those of you who want to know more about Evelyn and myself, you can go to Never Again Is Now podcast. at YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And please speak up against anti-Semitism and all hate.